to the Winchester Zoning Board of Appeals. We are here for, I think it's our fourth meeting with the petition number 3658, that a Bershman Brown Crowley Inc. concerning the property at 270 to 292 Washington Street, 12 Swan Street, 16 to 20 Swan Street in Winchester. The petitioner seeks a site plan review under section 9.5.1 of the Winchester zoning bylaw in accordance with the Mass General laws, so as to be permitted to demolish 3 buildings: a retail building at 278 to 292 Washington Street, an auto repair shop at 12 Swan Street, and a dry cleaners restaurant at 16 to 20 Swan Street, and to construct a new, I think it's now 11,995 or so square foot CVS pharmacy, associated 63 parking spaces and landscaping improvements. Property is located in the GBD 1, General Business 1 zoning district, and contains 51,653 square feet. From a procedural standpoint, what we're doing tonight is we're going over the petitioner's new plans that are the result of having been remanded back to the planning board and to the design review committee for the past several months. I guess it is now. From reviewing the plans this weekend, it looks like they've made quite a bit of progress. And so I think what we'll do tonight is let the petitioner go through these revised plans, focusing primarily, hopefully, on the revisions relative to the original presentation. Then I think we have counsel for the abutters here. I saw somewhere, so I do want to hear from Mr. Hill, and then other town boards, and then we will hear from members of the public with an emphasis on those who are not represented by counsel and who we have not heard from before. So at this point, I will open up to the petition.
Thank you, Chairman Sampson. Kevin Patton of BKA Architects will go through the changes. As you know, there's been substantial collaboration with the Winchester Design Review Committee, resulting in this revised plan. And his intention was to go through the changes. The site plan has not really changed that much, so he'll go through the architectural design.
Just one clarification for myself. A lot of the write-up talks about 1,000 square foot increase in size. Are the numbers in the plans correct in terms of the size of the existing structures? Because it looks like we're within 125 feet with the new petition, the new plan.
It's less than 1,000. You are correct. It was 11. The collective square footage was in my letter to you, to the board.
It looks like 11,800 of what's there now versus.
It's very close.
I think it is.
The proposed building is 11,955 square feet, and collectively, I can do that math right now. It's 11,830 collectively what's there, without basement space.
Right. Versus 11,955.
Correct.
So, okay, so it's about a 1% increase.
Exactly. Very comfortable.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Patton. I'm with BKA Architects. And what I'm going to do is just run through some of the existing photographs of the project. Then I'm going to hand it over to the civil engineer, and then we'll work our way back around to the building architecture. So our proposed project is this block at the intersection of Swanton and Washington Street, predominantly surrounded by 2.5 to 3-story single and multifamily homes, with a 2-tenant retail building located here, a single-tenant auto repair located here, and a multi-tenant plaza located at the intersection. These are some of the examples of the homes in the immediate area. They're also duplicated on the board to the rear of me. Single family, predominantly 2.5 to 3-story homes, anywhere from 25 to 35 feet in height above the street level. The existing plaza is predominantly a masonry building with a mansard roof that's used mostly to contain the sun, and then a Spanish-style roof as it approaches the intersection. This is the rear of the existing plaza. It's really pretty much utilitarian and to be used as receiving product. The side from Swanton Street, relatively short in depth, does have some nice brick reveals, a little bit of detail. The height of the building is about 16 feet, 16 to 16.5 feet above the sidewalk. The sidewalk does vary, so the height changes as you move along Washington Street. Another example of the existing building in its current condition. This is the auto repair. This is located towards the middle structure. Fairly typical garage bays and a small service area. It's very dark. I apologize, the photographs aren't showing up well, but the existing plaza is here, and you can see the depth of pavement between Swan Street running through here to the auto repair. Similar shot. This is in the parking field behind the existing plaza, so we're looking at the auto repair here, the two tenant buildings to the left, and the strip plaza on the right. This is the two tenant building, the third building down Swanton Street. Because these are a little bit dark, I'm just going to run through them. And I'm going to hand it over to the civil engineer.
Good evening. Just for the record, my name is Brian Bennett. I'm the civil engineer with R.J. O'Connell and Associates. And my presentation tonight is essentially going to focus on the site civil plan changes that have been performed since our last meeting in front of the board of the end of January. I just quickly had an existing conditions site plan shown as discussed before. The site is the total of about 1.2 acres in area. There's 3 existing structures on the site. The site itself is comprised of 4 curb cuts. There's one along Washington Street, and there are 3 individual curb cuts along Swanton Street to service the strip plaza, the auto repairs, and the vacant restaurant cleaner lot. The area in green on this slide depicts the amount of landscaping and green space that has been devoted to this site as of today. That equates in total in the aggregate about 3,000 square feet or 6% of the site. It should be noted that on the south end of the property, this general location in here, the site abuts a residential zoning district. So in summary, the site, the property in question we're looking at is corner of Washington and Swan. The site itself is located entirely within the general business 1 zoning district. The proposal in front of the board tonight is to raise the existing structures and construct a CVS pharmacy, which is permitted as a matter of right within the general business 1 zoning district in accordance with the current bylaws. This is the proposed development program being presented. The program has been modified slightly since January in response to comments that were presented to the design review committee and the planning board process. Essentially, CVS pharmacy located in central Swanton in Washington. We have reduced the amount of curb cuts from 4 existing down to 2. There will be 1 full access curb cut along Washington, and 1 full access curb cut along Swanton Street. 63 parking spaces are being provided within the interior of the parking lot. As can be seen from this slide, we've substantially increased the amount of green space and landscaping. We are proposing over 10,300 square feet of landscaping, which will triple the amount of what is there today. As I mentioned, the site we've got 63 spaces as shown. So in summary, since our meeting in January, in collaboration and working with the Design Review Committee and the Planning Board, I've outlined, I'll highlight now the plan changes that have occurred. First and foremost is the CVS building footprint has been reduced in size from 12,112 square foot building footprint with a 1,616 square foot mezzanine to a building footprint that's 11,955 square feet in size with a mezzanine of 2405. We are providing 63 parking spaces. The loading area has been relocated from the southeast side of the building. If you go back to the slide before, under your submittal that we had in January, the loading dock was located in this general area. We have now flipped the loading dock to be in the southwest corner of the building. Again, this was in response to comments from the Design Review Committee. In addition to that, both in response to comments received from the Design Review as well as our adjacent neighbor, we've also relocated the dumpster and the compactor pad. In the January submission, it was located at the southwest corner of the property, which is adjacent to a single-family residence. We've now moved that to be within the all-inclusive within the loading dock facility. So on January, it was located over in this general area, and I was moved it to be right within the receiving area. We have also, as a result of reconfiguring the loading dock area, we have also relocated, and I'll have Kevin talk about this a little bit more detail, is the CVS entrance or store entrance that was accessing out to the parking lot area. It was on the corner of the building in January. We now moved it, relocated to the west wall location. We've submitted the plans to the fire department. The fire department has provided, I believe, a letter to file that indicates that they have approved all the appropriate fire lanes and egress points into the building from the site. At our January meeting, the zoning board had requested that we perform a groundwater modeling analysis. We have done that by Ransom Environmental. That document has been submitted as part of our site plan submission set. The takeaway from that document was that as a result of our stormwater management system being totally a subsurface infiltration system design, the groundwater modeling analysis was performed, and the conclusions from that analysis were that there would be no impact to downstream butters. The stormwater management system and the modeling analysis with that will have no impacts to the contaminated soil plume limits that are on the site that need to be remediated. And that is worst case scenario, which is the groundwater is at the seasonal high water table elevation and during a 100-year storm event. The height of the water mounting underneath the basin will not surcharge or increase, will go into the existing subsurface basin. The top of the mound will be at the bottom of the basin. So the basin is fully empty, except for another storm should not be happening. So in addition to the site plan changes, we also updated the landscaping and the lighting as well. The landscape changes, we've increased, again, at the request of the Design Review and the Planning Board, we've increased the landscape planting, buffering, the number of plants and the spacing of plants along the southerly property line, which abuts the residential growing district. We have added a fence enclosure around the transform pad, which is located adjacent or close to the Washington Street curb cut. We've agreed to increase the tree breaks planned along Swanton Street on the property. And bike racks and benches that are added along our Washington Street. Again, these are all in response to comments that we've received from not only planning but from the Design Review Committee. Staying on that same topic, we have also revised the site lighting entirely. And what I mean by that is we started with changing the light system. The original plans that we submitted back in January proposed a metal halide light source that has now been changed to an LED light source. What that has allowed us to do is to revise the design even further. We were able to further reduce the light pole mounting height from 23 feet to 18. That is a 15-foot pole structure mounted on a 3-foot base.
Is that by virtue of switching to the LED?
Yes. I'd just like to add a caveat to the mounting height. Under our original submission, the height was 33 feet, so we've gone from 33 to 23 to 18. The lighting intensity has been reduced from 14-foot candles down to 5. What I mean by that is that the lighting intensity directly underneath the site light fixture for metal halide, and we're averaging about 14-foot candles directly in the parking lot underneath the fixture. That has now been reduced to a 5-foot candle reading. So it's more like half, two-thirds of what it used to be. However, the overall intensity, lighting intensity from the parking field has been further reduced. With the metal halide light source, in our January submission, it was averaging out to be 4.5-foot candles. Is now down to 3-foot candles. We also were able to reduce the number of poles from 5 to 4. And the LED lighting still maintains, we still provide a 0-foot candle reading at the perimeter of the property. There's no light spilling onto abutting neighbors. The LED photometrics plan was presented at the Design Review Committee. I will not speak for them, but my takeaway from that is that the alternative light source with LED was warmly received and an acceptable alternative to the metal halide light sources that we initially proposed. So in general, those are the site plan changes.
Great, thank you. Is 3-foot candles enough?
Yes.
No.
Yes. That's the dark sky initiative. If you're in that 2.5 to 3-foot candle reading, it's adequate light to safely light the parking lot so that people can identify an entry to the store and back up into their vehicle when they leave.
Any questions? We'll continue.
For the record, my name is Kevin Hatton. I'm with BKA Architects. I'm going to talk a little bit about the building changes. We've been working very closely with Design Review on this particular building. And this is a view of the proposed project from Washington Street. It's predominantly a flat roof building with a masonry design and style, with a significant amount of storefront windows on Washington Street. And then we have this glazed, welcoming entry feature that really has become a bit of a focal point as we've gone through the design review process. We have awnings over our storefronts to give a little bit of shelter and that retail feel. We also have a new feature, which are these raised planters that have seating opportunities. And what this does is it helps to define 2 pedestrian areas. One that's right at the street edge, and then a layering effect to the foreground to allow a different pace of the pedestrian area behind that as you get closer to the building. And our sign is located above our entrance. It used to be off to the side over here. So this is really identifying the entry area and lighting it externally with some gooseneck lights that we will color to match the building so they disappear into the background as best we can. Next view here brings us to the intersection of Washington and Swanton. Swanton Street is located here, Washington to the left. And we've carried the Washington storefront feel around the corner for 2 bays. This section from here all the way over has been referred to through the design process as this porch area. And then we change it as we go down Swanton. The grade drops off significantly as you move away from the intersection, so we're not using awnings. They're not effective when they become that high up in the air. And we reveal a cast stone base, and it steps down with grade. This is something that was strongly suggested to us. We're also using the cast stone as the window lintel sills, window lintels, and then as a band across the top of the building. This is an elevated view. Sorry for it being so dark. But the important part about this is that the storefront continues, the window pattern continues from Swanton around to the parking field, which is located to the back of the site with Washington Street over here and Swanton Street over here. And the key about the changed elevation here is that we moved our parking lot entrance off of the corner and down the facade, the west facade, and that allowed us to bring our receiving doors, which used to be located up towards Washington Street, all the way down away from Washington Street, and our receiving area then gets located right in this portion of the site. Now, that left us with a lot of discussion about the parking over here, and it was felt that this parking area really benefited the Washington Street entry. So we've created a pathway connection from the sidewalk adjacent to the building up to the Washington Street entry, which is just around the corner. I'm also showing the 4 parking lot lighting poles, 2 of them in the islands, and then 2 at the perimeter of the building. All right. This is a floor plan. I've essentially taken the roof off the building and sliced it through the windows. And really what this shows you is how open we are with all these windows to the street. Swanton Street is on this side. Washington, again, is over here. You can see our planters that start to divide up that sidewalk. This is a significant depth. I think it's over or at 12 feet. Plus, there's the city sidewalk that's just beyond that gray line. This was a focus with the Design Review Committee on how that entry is as welcoming a feature as possible, so that that Washington Street door really read as a predominant functional entrance. The original proposal had the grade change exterior to the building, and we brought that inside the building and contained it within this nice vestibule area, and it runs around the perimeter of it. And then there's a set of stairs that flank the door. The previous submission to the design review had the door over in the corner. With their guidance, we reconfigured this area and brought it to the middle. And our mezzanine area is located right here. And as you can see, it stops short of the Washington Street, and it's flanking the south side of the project and is removed as far as we can from the public streets. So just to give it its due recognition on how much time was spent with this area in creating a bright, welcoming entry feature on Washington Street. And this had taken several different configurations at some points with the ramp jutting out into the space and concealing the vestibule door. We feel that this is really the best entry solution for this site condition and dealing with the grade. And all that work resulted in this entry feature. This gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the materials being proposed. We have a chocolate kind of brown brick, the cast stone, which is smooth at the piers and underneath the storefront windows, and a little chamfered edge detail here. And then we go to a rock face, gives a little bit more rusticated face to this building. The planter that helps us deal with the grade change and allows this pedestrian access from the parking field here up to the Washington Street door. The glazed transom and this nice tall open space inside. as well as we have further detailing in the brickwork with the reveals that break down the massing, the reveal for locating the lighting, and corbelling at the string point of this east edge archway. And we can see our awnings and the defining of that space along Washington Street. So that's it's all the highlights of the building, and I'm going to give it to traffic.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Giles Heehan with Vanessa Associates, and thank you, Kevin, to follow up that architectural presentation. But just a quick summary of points. We've done a very detailed traffic analysis. We've updated it to include about 520 square feet in the mezzanine area. The study has been done in accordance with state and industry standards. The question of the neighborhood and the school commitments we looked at in November time when school was in session. Traffic operations, traffic will not change out there. The Swan and Washington Street intersection operates at level sort of D without the project and level sort of D with the project. Site driveways operate at level sort of C, so those are all very good operating conditions. In terms of traffic increases, no approach to that area will be added more than 10 vehicles in the course of an hour, and it will be about a 2% increase or less. We've looked at detailed safety conditions in terms of accident data, pedestrian issues, crossings. We've looked at 6 years of accident data, 3 from the state and 3 from the town. And within those periods, there was 2 accidents in the area reported by Mass DOT and only 1 accident reported in the town hall. So it's a very safe area. In terms of pedestrian crossings and pedestrian access, as you know, the signal there has an exclusive pedestrian phase, so there's a time to press the button, 16 seconds, no traffic moves at all, and a safe pedestrian crossing. So, in terms of recommendations, Brian talked about we're closing 2 curb in the area. That's better for traffic flow. That's better for pedestrian crossings and cross driveways. The driveway widths will be narrowed to 24 feet. Again, a lesser width for pedestrians to cross in safer conditions, and the driveways will be under stop control. So, in summary, it's been a very detailed analysis, and this is a very safe project.
Can you just touch on the number of pass-by trips, the percentage? I recall a 53%, I think, number, and another 25%.
Yeah. There's in the state of Massachusetts, they only allow us to use a 25% pass-by. So when we do the study, for example, in the morning, if we generate 70 peak hour trips coming in and out, we can only take credit for 25% of what will be passed by. And pass by essentially is you're on your way to work, you got to pick up some medicine, you drive by the site, you go in and get medicine, you can continue on to work. So that's pass by. So the state only allows us to do 25%. The industry's done research on that, and the industry number is 53%. So while more than half of those peak hour trips are driving by the site anyway, we only use 25%, so it's a more conservative analysis.
This is our last plan presenter.
Okay. Very good. Then let's hear a question from the board.
I'd like to just ask a question. On the plans, you had something I've seen before, which is truck turning radiuses. As you come in from the site, you come off Washington, you go down to the semi, and you pull in off Swanton Street to the parking area. And I believe the truck goes around and you head back towards Washington. But it looks to me as though it really depends on, it takes up 2 lanes to get in and 2 lanes to get out. Is that correct?
What we have provided in our site plan set, which was, again, a request from, that we got from the town engineer, a wheel-based 50 tractor trailer will be delivering product to the store. As a result of revising the loading dock configuration, in our original submission, we initially had the tractor trailer taking a left into the site from Washington Street back into the loading dock area would exit through Swanton. Since we have now flipped the loading dock area, the tractor trailer will access the site through Swan Street, so we can come from the center of town to the signal, take a left at the signal, and you'll utilize the entire curb cut entrance to enter the site and then travel in a counterclockwise direction back into the loading dock area, unload product, and then would exit by means of taking left onto Washington Street to its next destination. So the purpose of the truck turning move was to provide the engineer with a model of the truck using auto turn, which is an industry standard, showing that there be no conflicts with internal curbings as a result of the modifications to the curb cuts in the parking lot area.
So my question is, you've got traffic, it's two-way traffic in and out of the site, in both the entrance and the exit for where the trucks go. Is that correct? So when the trucks are coming in, no one will be able to exit if the truck is coming in.
Now, I guess what I would contemplate happen is that before the truck driver takes the left into the site from Swanton, he will allow the traffic on the site to exit out, and then he would then make his maneuver into the site to the loading dock area, and conversely, when he's leaving, he will not be occupying the two lanes of the curb cut to exit in one lane.
And by the same token onto Washington Street, the truck would take up 2 lanes to exit too, right? No one can come in while the truck's trying to exit.
No, he would be able to.
It takes up the entire, to me it looks as though it takes up pretty well the whole curb cut to get the truck out.
If I can just add, Giles, Vanessa Associates, the trailer trucks, you're only going to have one trailer truck per week to the store. So you're correct, it will take up the entering exit, but it's only a once a week event, and it's not practical to make that curb 50 feet wide. So when that one truck comes in once a week, it's not practical. We work on many sites, so it's one a week. You're correct in your point, but it's a very small one. Okay.
I have some engineering questions, but first, on the architecture, you showed a perspective, and I believe you from overhead, and it showed a flat roof. Do you not have anything on the roof? Is there no air handling, no exhaust on the roof? Or what do you plan to do?
There will be packaged rooftop units, and without a full design of the management systems, I don't know their exact location. However, on the elevations I've indicated, or that they will be screened, and the product that I was proposing is called an advisor rooftop screen, and it mounts to the unit itself.
So you will have structures then sitting on, do you know how high they are?
The typical rooftop unit is about 4.5 feet above the roof, and they're anywhere from 6 feet long to 4 to 5 feet wide, 4 feet wide.
And it's HVAC?
Correct.
And do you have any idea of how much sound you generate?
We can provide all the decibel levels for that. It's not an uncommon question. I get it almost every single time that we're working in a more urban area where we have a fairly dense site. In 15 years of doing the stores, the units haven't changed that much, and I've never yet had a complaint come back to us about rooftop equipment noise. They're very, very quiet, very efficient.
I think you might want to submit some information just saying, these are what we've used, this is what we're proposing, these are the decibel, because it's pretty tight in there. And you almost have those units will be up at second floor elevations in that neighborhood.
Right. Now, I do want to, you're absolutely correct, although where we're abutting the residential zone, there is a step in the roof in this area. So if my equipment is located roughly in the middle, visually it will be somewhat screened, and there will be that mass. So these These homes are, I think, full 3 stories. I'll have a hard time screening them from their upper levels, but
Well, you say you're going to screen each unit, right?
right, they're going to have a view of the roof. It's unfortunately, it's just the nature of the height of the residence. So they will see it up there. There will be a screen right around it, and that will aid in reducing the decibel levels of the units.
What materials are you screening them with, HVAC?
Typically, it's a metal.
Is that what you're going to use?
Right, on the plans we're calling for Advisor, which is a manufacturer of rooftop screening products.
What does it look like?
We'd have to submit a cut sheets on it, but it's typically just a flat metal screen, and you can get a little profile at the top of it to dress it up.
Is it colored?
Yes.
Is it colored to match the facade, or colored to match the roof, or what?
They give us a whole chart of colors to choose from, but we'd have to choose one that's going to work best with the project.
What's the step down between the roofs?
The height of the step?
The height of the step.
It is 3'7" inches.
Yeah.
It seems to me one of the big design elements of this is the drainage system. And I think you may have mentioned that it's an infiltrated drainage system.
Yes.
And at the end, you had a bunch of bullet points that said you're not going to impact the bodies, or you're not going to impact the plume, and you're not going to intersect the bottom of the infiltrated. But I think it would be helpful if we could understand, because in reviewing the plans, it seems like everything is very tight tolerances. For example, you're predicting a groundwater mound right at the bottom of the infiltrator. And it's pretty good with a natural system to be able to predict something within a tolerance of less than a couple of inches. So I think it would be helpful if we could understand what data you relied upon, how you established your groundwater table, what sort of field investigations you did, and how did you come to a conclusion as to where the groundwater table is?
Project, but what we have done is currently the site sheet flows stormwater uncontrollably and untreated, and essentially 50% of the site, in rough terms, this piece of the site right here, sheet flows onto Swan Street and travels westerly down Swan Street. The remainder of the site sheet flows to the corner of the property into a swale here that then off it goes. So we have designed our stormwater management system to alleviate that current condition. The site stormwater management system has been designed to handle the volume equivalent to 100-year storm event. The test pits were dug within the, although there's a structure out there today, if you picture the automotive building, the majority of the subsurface basin is located within that building footprint, but we were able to dig test pits around the outside perimeter, but still within the basin. We found the results of those test pits were that the soil profile is all coarse sand and gravel. Groundwater was not encountered within any of the test pits. However, in one of the test pits down at about 11 feet below existing grade, we observed some groundwater modeling. As a result of that, we in our design, we took that data, assuming that is estimated seasonal high groundwater, and everything is based off of that. Soil permeability tests were done within the soil profile within the basin area. They varied from, the results varied. The slowest permeability rate was 2 inches per hour. That's an infield condition. We took that infield condition and designed our infiltration basin based on 2.6 inches. We designed the basin assuming the infiltration rate based on 1.3 inches per hour, and our groundwater modeling analysis study prepared by Ransom was designed on that assumption as well, as 1.3 inches per hour as the existing soil permeability rate. So those conclusions that were raised are based on those factors. I will acknowledge that I failed to mention in my initial presentation that we have received a comment letter from the engineering department, and they have requested some additional backup information as to how some of our assumptions that we made with respect to the groundwater map analysis report, and we are in the process of addressing those concerns. In addition to the test pits that are out there, there are also some existing monitoring wells within the vicinity, and the town engineer asked if we had any readings within the well as far as the groundwater was, and we did not. So she would like us to analyze or compare what the groundwater readings are in the monitoring wells against the estimated seasonal high groundwater elevation that was established in the test pits. So we're in the process of providing her with that information.
Thank you. You also, on your plans, you have some detail on the, you got an infiltrator basin, which is designed to handle the whole project.
Yes.
And then you have a temporary basin in the southwest corner.
Yes.
And you have a construction sequence.
Yes.
And can you tell me how did you set up the sequence?
The sequence is based on my understanding of handling a project of this type, where we have a few constraints to be able to address. One is we have existing buildings on site that need to be raised. There is an existing soil contamination area that we need to be cognizant of, and we need to grade the existing grades. The site slopes from Washington Street back towards in a westerly direction down Swanton. And we also have, again, one of our key components is the subsurface detention basin. So the thought process that we went through from construction means and methods would be that the first step would be to secure the site with a temporary construction fence and install erosion control measures to ensure that once the pavement is demolished and pavement starts being removed, not regular rainfall, we're not sheet flowing sands and sediments onto the public street or into our budding neighbors. Understand that we have that construction. The existing buildings need to come down, and then with that, one of the first steps would be to install the subsurface basin, which is our deepest utility. It made sense for me to install a temporary sediment basin at the southwest corner of the property. So that's what we did. The understanding would be, as the contractor is raising buildings with that temporary sediment basin in that southwest corner, we also have a test pit in that location, in which we also have soil permeability performed, and soil is infiltrated through that quadrant of the site at about 10 inches per hour. So we have good sands, good quality sand, that the water is not going to stay stagnant in the basin. It will infiltrate through the soil to the groundwater table. The contractor, with that BMP for construction in place, the contractor would then, as the site's being fluid, he would install throughout the site in the north-south direction temporary sediment swales to intercept groundwater at key locations and move it to the location where the temporary sediment basin is. From that point, water would infiltrate through. We initially planned to allowed in the event that we had a heavy rainstorm. We have a proposed catch basin located within the sediment basin that will be, it's in its permanent location, but we were taking advantage of it during construction as well, that one of the first, after the building demolition was done, the subsurface infiltration basin would have been built. And we were going to install a backup BMP train that in the event that the sediment basin is filled up with water, the surplus water could discharge into the catch basin through a sediment filter bag. It would discharge into oil particle separated BMP, and then it would allow to go into the subsurface infiltration basin. We presented that to the town engineer. It was one of her comments in her latest letter. She was not in favor of that design. What she has asked for is that understanding that we have a residential water to the west of us. She has asked that we make the sediment basin, expand the sediment basin to be bigger and deeper so that we can contain more water during construction, and then show the approximate locations where the sediment swales would bisect the site, and then add additional notes to plan that if the contractor moves it, these are the details and sequencing to do that. So that's what we're in the process now of revising the comment letter.
Okay, so you're going to be revising this plan?
Yes, she got at the town engineer request, yes, we'll be adding some additional information and making the sediment basin bigger.
It does seem like you're making everything go to that corner.
Correct.
And it's surrounded on two sides by 3 miles.
Correct. And again, when you take into account that with demolition of 3 buildings, soil determination, boom, CBS pharmacy building, and subsurface basin, when I took all those factors into play, there was not a lot of land area options available left to place the sediment swales. That's why it was placed in the southwest corner. Again, I don't want to speak to the town engineer, but when I explained it to her, she understood, and she asked for additional safety measures to be in place. She's asked for it to make it bigger, make it a little bit deeper, and add a berm on the westerly side to further protect the adjacent property.
I think that makes sense, because when you list your activities of demoing, building, extracting contaminated soils, and it's all flowing in that direction, it seems to make sense to have as much of a margin of safety as you can possibly can. If you can do that by making it deeper, that makes sense.
Correct. We'll do that.
How does all this fit in with the town engineer's comment 21, where she recommended additional subsurface investigations be performed after the building demolition to confirm the soil?
Yes, yes, but I asked her that question as well. Her intent was is that we test. She understood the conflicts with the buildings. What she's asking me to do is, when the buildings are demolished, is to do test pits within the automotive building area to confirm 2 things primarily. One is that estimated seasonal high groundwater is still at the same elevation that you based your design on, number 1. And number 2, that the soils profile is still consistent. She wants to make sure that the assumptions that are used in the design of the stormwater management system are going to be consistent and still hold true once the building is raised. And we agree that when the buildings were raised, we coordinated the engineering department to have those test pits done so that they can monitor them and confirm the assumptions we made in that design, but consistent.
What if they don't meet expectations? Do you have room to?
Yes, if they don't, well, I say yes, but it's going to be a function of what those results are. We probably will have to modify our design to the extent of that modification. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty comfortable that the test pits that we have done were filed on site, and they vary throughout the property. The soil profile seems to be very consistent. The location of where we are is underneath an existing building. A structural fill and coarse gravel usually underlaying the front of the floor slab. So I'm pretty comfortable that the design assumptions that we've made will hold true for once we do the additional test pits.
One thing you might want to add to the erosion control sequencing is your contaminated soils. It's not addressed. And I don't know if you handled that separately or what your proposal for that is.
Agreed, and that's a little bit out of my element. My understanding is that we acknowledge that the soil contaminated from there. The environmental engineer will be developing a ramp plan, but it'll be independent that will specifically earmark the remediation methods that will be used to remediate that plume. I can't speak to it in a lot of detail, but what I can do is advise the contractor with a note on the drawing that they need to be coordinated.
What I think our point of the board is that there's no reference, you said in your presentation there's contaminated soils out there. There's a lot of evidence that there's contamination. And yet, the set of plans that we have here in front of us doesn't address it.
Yes, that will be addressed through the ramp plan that has not yet been developed.
Then I think, as a minimum, my suggestion would be to acknowledge that
Okay.
in your construction sequencing so that we as a board or any of the neighbors know that you've at least addressed it. And there's a methodology and procedure and a plan in place you can reference it. Can we talk a little bit about the drainage network?
Sure.
And I understand everything is designed so that it all, the roof, the parking lot, the swell in the southwest corner, all goes into that infiltrated system.
Yes.
And it floods up to roughly elevation 46, 45.12, something like that, during a 100-year storm, and then infiltrates into the ground hopefully. What I was a little concerned about when I looked at the plans is that in the driveway on Swanton Street, there's a catch basin that's actually at elevation 44.3. The rim elevation is 44.3, which is an elevation lower than your flood elevation in the infiltration system. So, to my simple mind, I can't see how you can get a infiltration basin to fill up to 46 if you've got an outlet already at 44 discharging in the Swanton Street.
What we have done is we've designed the pipe network was designed based on 25-year storm event, which was consistent with what was outlined in the subdivision rules and regs. And what we did is we modeled the hydraulic gray line at the request of the town engineer to ensure that that during the 100-year storm, that the stormwater drainage network would not surcharge on the site. And we have been able to model that hydraulic gray line to prove that is the case. So that as water is being collected in the stormwater management system, it's going into the infiltration basin, but there's also an infiltration component going on. So in the event of a 100-year storm, it is all self-contained on the property. It will not be removed. We provided the town engineer with the hydraulic gray line analysis calculations that were to back that up.
Okay, and you provided a test.
Yes.
So I sort of flipped through them. And what I see when I look at that hydraulic grade line is that you show the grades running through all the catch basins and pipes and nothing surcharging.
Yes.
And nothing surcharging because where it's discharging, you're saying it's at elevation 4, which is the bottom of the infiltration basin on this side. Your plans show the bottom of the infiltration basin is at elevation 4.
Correct.
Okay. So with your hydraulic grade lines, you've established it based on an outfall, you call it, in your plans at elevation 40. The question is, or at least my experience has been this would change. The infiltration basin fills up, goes up to elevation 46. You no longer have an outfall at elevation 40. So you begin to surcharge your pipes.
I would have to check that for you.
Well, just logically, how can you have an outfall at elevation 40 if you know during a 100-year storm that basin fill to elevation 46. Now, if you look at the groundwater analysis, first of all, the data is all over the place. There was a September submission, there was a December submission. We've got multiple stormwater management reports, we've got multiple geotechnical reports. And it's a little challenge to go through all that information and try to reconcile.
Absolutely.
One thing you might want to do is just try to present the data in a spreadsheet that says, here's all our test pits, here's the groundwater elevation, here's the grade elevation, here's what we predict the elevations to be. But, and I think as I went through it, there are some things that just don't reconcile. For example, if you look at your test pit 106, the ground elevation on the test pit line is 46.17, and then on the plan it's labeled as 46.6. And that's not much of a discrepancy, but it's a half a foot, perhaps. And since the infiltration basin is designed to such a tight tolerance, is that half a foot can make a difference between functioning well or not functioning at all because the groundwater amount rises up into it. So I think it would be, you should probably look at those numbers and see which is the accurate number. The other thing I have a concern about is in your plan you have a section that says the groundwater is at 35.8 elevation.
Yeah, that was based on, I believe, test pit 104, which was in the, location of the subsurface basin.
Mm-hmm.
That soil log, what I did was, again, the groundwater wasn't accounted in that log, but at 11 feet, at a depth of 11 feet into the test pit, in the soil description, there was referencing to soil modeling. So what I did is I said, okay, from 11 to 12, I think it was, there was a reference to soil modeling, so I didn't know if it was 11 feet or 11 and a half or 12. So I assumed the worst case there is that we get 11 feet. That's been modeling again, so that's how we determined estimated seasonal groundwater in the reference to 35.8.
Well, if you look at your test pit log 103, there's also a note that says the soil is moist 5 feet below grade. 5 feet below grade at that test pit would be 41.
Correct, but there was no reference to any modeling, so and there was no groundwater observed. So,
well, how would you explain moist?
well, visual groundwater was not observed in the test pit, so I would assume that if groundwater was that high when it went down, we would have seen it. I did not. I wasn't at the site when the test pits were done.
Well, what time of year were they done?
They were done in the winter. They were done, I was going to say.
Which is typically when the groundwater is fairly deep, I would guess.
Right.
The concern is test pit 104 is moist at elevation 41, test pit 105 is moist at 39, test pit 106 is moist at 41. So there's a big moisture factor there that's not really explained.
Right, okay. Again, yeah, but there was no reference in modeling, so I didn't take that to mean that groundwater was fluctuating up and down, and there was no evidence or visual evidence of groundwater in those test pits, so I assumed that...
Did you log these test pits?
No, I did not. They were done by Ransom Environmental.
There are some discrepancies on the plan, and your plan says the groundwater is at 35.8, and the mounding report indicates that the seasonal high groundwater table is estimated to reach an elevation of 36.8. So somebody's off by that foot.
Yeah, that would, the town engineers brought that to my attention as well. There's a typo in the groundwater. When I spoke with the Ransom Environmental, they acknowledged there was a typo in the study. It should have been 35.8. So we're getting, again, that's part of getting it revised.
So the Ransom report says that the peak volume capacity is 45. and the stormwater report says 45.12. So which would be the correct number there? Does the basin flood to 45 or does it flood to 45.12?
I would trust the modeling from the storm, from the drainage calculation, when we ran through our model, 45.12 would probably be the appropriate.
So Ransom is wrong on that?
Well, my guess is, again, they were doing groundwater mounting analysis, so I'm not sure what the basis of their modeling was, but between 45 and 45.12, the numbers are pretty consistent.
Well, if you look at their report, and they had a nice graphic showing groundwater contours through the site, and they model the groundwater flow through the site. There's actually a 37-foot elevation that wraps through your infiltration.
Right.
And then if you look at their mounding analysis, they show a 4-foot mound, the contour of the 1-foot mound, 2-foot, 3-foot, and 4-foot mound. And what I noticed on the graphic was that the 4-foot mound intersects with the 37-foot groundwater contour for seasonal high water table, which would say that would put your mound at elevation 41, which is above the bottom of your infiltration basin.
Correct, by that foot, that there's a discrepancy on, because my guess, again.
Well, this is separate. This is just going off of a graphic of I think it's the most recent. Yeah, that is this. It's this graphic in which you have the prior drawing shows these nice contours coming through the site, and in this corner it says elevation 37. Now if let's look to the groundwater mound, they say, well, in that corner we're going to have a 4-foot mound. If I had 37 before, I come up to 41, which puts the mound up into the basin. And my point is I think that you're designing a drainage system, a closed system on a fairly tight site, a fairly tight neighborhood, that if you look at some of the information, it looks like it's working. If you look at some of the other information, it looks like there's a potential that it won't work. And I think you need to get all the information in sync and prove that either it works in accordance with the design, modify the design so it works properly. Well, there's something easier. I do, so I guess suffice it to say, I took some time and dug into these and have some understanding of it. And it seems like there's some flaws, errors. It needs a tune-up. And I think it's critically important on this site because the whole design is relying on infiltration. If the infiltration doesn't work, then you can jump to the conclusion that the whole design won't work. So I think we need to be very, very certain, based on your analysis, that that will work. I noticed you showed a snow storage area up in the southwest corner of the berm.
Yes.
And so the plan is you plow the parking lot and you dump the snow in that corner.
Well, there is a limit. What has been agreed to is that we understand that part of the planning board and our review process, we agreed that that snow would be stored in this general location, would be outside of the swale there, located in this general area. The agreement was that snow would be piled, would be stored there to a height of 6 feet. Once we reach that height of 6 feet, if we had another snowstorm, that additional snow would need to be trucked and hauled off-site and disposed at an approved location off-site.
In my reviewing of the plans, I didn't see that agreement. Is that on one of the plans?
It is not written or agreed to on the plans. What we'll do is we have a note on drawing C2 regarding the height limitation of snow.
The height?
Yeah, the height limitation of snow is identified and noted on a note on drawing C2.
Well, a couple of concerns. One is, could you have a height limitation? Because there's not much volume in there.
Correct.
You know, for example, if you got a 1 foot snowfall in that parking lot and try to pile all that snow there,
It's not gonna-
it'd be 20 feet high.
Correct.
But the bigger concern is you show a lot of landscaping in there. You talk about trees to be protected, trees to be added.
Right.
And you show your snow storage area on sheet C2,
Right.
but you don't show it on the landscaping plan. And in that same area that you're planting with a lot of fairly mature plant materials to screen the neighbor, you're then dumping snow on them.
Yeah, there'd be snow disposed of in the areas in between the trees, and you're right, it's a small area. It was really meant to take care of a small storm event. In the event that you get, like we just went through this winter, if you got hit with a 2 foot snowstorm, only a small piece of what is on the property is going to be stored in the designated location, and the remainder of the snow would need to be disposed of off-site.
So you look at that plan, and all that plant materials, you've got a 18-foot light pole there, you've got guardrail,
Yes,
you've got a drainage swale, and you're going to place the snow between all the trees?
it would be plowed and disposed of in, you know, excuse me, in this, in this general area and this green area over here, there would be no snow stored in this swale. So, yeah, the snow management contractor coming on board would be educated on the requirements, and with the understanding is that once the height limitation was met,
Well, in addition to that, I think you should specify a height limitation and that you won't extend any further to prevent damage from the landscape materials. And, you know, snow, when you plow it out of a parking lot, has a lot of salt in it. Dumping the salt and snow on top of the trees, and the plant materials there. I mean, they're designed to buffer the neighbors, so you should make sure that they grow and survive. And I noticed one of your plant materials are white pines. Did the design review committee have anything to say about the use of white pines?
no.
I think you can probably select a more attractive material. And white pines,
I take notes, I'd be more than happy to change the plant material. If white pine is not a preference, we'll change it.
well, I think you ought to talk to your landscape architect, but, you know, white pines tend to break a lot. They grow quickly, there's good screening for a while, and after they've grown tall, they don't represent much of a screening. They drip a lot of sap, throw a lot of pine cones. So they're great out in the woods in Maine, but I'm not sure that's a great spot for white pines. So you might want to just rethink that. And then it seems like the town engineer had a lot of questions about the retaining wall along the western property line. Did you discuss that with
Yes,
us?
yes. What we were proposing is a modular block retaining wall, and there are 3 vendors that are in the industry. It's Versalock, Mason, and Keystone. What we discussed was that she had some questions about, you don't show an underdrain behind the retaining wall. I said, yes, typically when we get the approved, when we get shop drawings in from the contractor to stand by the retaining wall engineer, we go through and review, and we identify those stop gaps to make sure that the wall being designed has got all the characteristics of that corner. She understood where it's coming from. What we agreed to was, what I offered up to her was that if the town engineer requested, we go down and provide you with a copy, the engineering department, a copy of the stamp retaining wall shop drawings once the retaining wall vendor shows.
When he stamped the drawing showing because you mounted a fence on that.
Yes,
Versalock wall,
yes,
too.
yes.
So his shop drawing would show the fence also.
He would show the fence, the guardrail, in relation to the parking lot. So yeah, there'd be a section through the wall that would show the actual design of sign and seal, yes.
I think the other issue that she raises is along the western property, the abutter to the west
Yes,
has a low retaining wall,
yes,
and you have a retaining wall.
correct.
And there's literally a gap about that big between them, which strikes me as being potentially hazardous. If you get a lake down there, it's going to fill up with water and debris. And have you talked to the abutter about somehow reconciling the difference between these two walls?
I personally have not. What I did was, the engineer raised that same comment. And what I wanted to make sure that on our civil design, that under the worst case scenario, assuming that for some reason when the abutter says, no, I'm not going to go into it, I still got to be able to design with that constraint. When I met with the engineer on Monday and I understood what the concern was, what I offered up was, well, when the retaining wall vendor is chosen, what I'll ask him to do is incorporate into the design is making that a landscape planter, so you have a tiered wall system, so that that potential valley or gap that is being created is now will be alleviated. She was amenable to that request. So that is the direction that I'm going to head in once the vendor is chosen.
Okay.
While we're on the engineer's comments, one other issue was the wheelchair ramp. Is there any agreement reached on that?
Yes, what we agreed, I asked the question, I didn't fully understand the question that she was asking, because it seemed like when I've been at the site, the wheelchair ramp seemed to be recently constructed within the last 3 to 5 years, so I was just curious as to if she knew of any of the ramps that were in violation. We did not do that study because we're getting out of the winters, and there's a lot of snow and stuff piled there. The town engineer just wanted assurances that since there's been some changes to ADA, that if the wheelchairs are not compliant, that we would rebuild the ramps, which said ramps, to be compliant. I said, that seems reasonable. So the way we left it was myself and the town engineer would review the wheelchair ramps at the intersection and determine if any, because there may not be any that are not compliant. If there was one, we would come up with a remediation plan to correct it.
Can you walk us through the screening that you're proposing to the abutters? You have some fences, 4-foot vegetative buffers.
Yeah, again, being sensitive to the fact that the site is a residential zoning district, we're required to have a 20-foot, a minimum 20-foot landscape buffer strip between the site and the residential zone line. So what we were proposing, there is an existing fence out there right now that essentially ends in this location. We are proposing to extend the fence along the southerly property line, bring it along the westerly property line back out to this location. We were initially proposing a chain link fence, but after consulting with design review, their preference was a wood fence to be comparable, a wood board fence to be comparable to what was out there. So that's what we did. We're continuing the fence. So the fence provides some additional screening such that patrons from the CVS property can just walk over to a white property. In addition, if there was any trash or debris, the fence would act as a barrier, so it could be all self-contained. And to, again, screen the abutters and working with the design review, we were adding a landscape buffer to complement the fence that was being planned to further enhance the screening from the residential abutters into the site.
What's going on at the Swan Street border? To the right of the curb cut.
Sure, the heading parking stalls. Again, yeah, being sensitive to the fact that, especially at night, patrons utilizing those stalls is the potential for the car headlights to glare into the abutting residence. We are proposing to plant a row of arborvitae evergreen trees to alleviate that concern along that entire length. The average planting height will be 5 feet. So the arborvitae will act as a screen barrier at nighttime to prevent headlight glare onto the abutting property.
There was no recommendation of a fence there?
The preference from design review, my takeaway was landscape vision at this moment.
Any questions?
Just to revisit the western elevation, looking at that landscape you have there on the western elevation, top of the sheet.
Yep.
It's apparently going to be densely planted landscape in order to provide that buffer, in addition to the fence, right?
Yes.
And that to me doesn't look dense. Is that the extent of it? I mean, if it's dense, you're trying to block out, you're trying to block the entire western elevation of landscape, correct?
Yes, and we're also sensitive to the fact that we have there is a grass swale in the middle of the landscape plantings. That's why we propose along the property line to infill with the landscape plantings. Then we have an area drain at the low point of that sediment sill to drain the water out. So the swale being incorporated into that landscape area, the plantings were proposed along the perimeter. And what we came up with, again, with collaboration with design review, was the plan that we submitted.
So the plan that we have is the one that shows the denseness of that landscape.
Yeah.
It's not dense. I mean, these trees are quite far apart. It's very much similar to that. And if you're trying to screen the CBS site from your westerly neighbors, that is not a screen in terms of landscape. You may have provided a screen with a fence to a certain extent. And what height is that fence? Is it 4 feet or 6?
No, it's 6 feet.
6 feet.
The fence was the predominant screen, and the landscaping was the secondary screen, so it's to supplement the fence.
I had imagined it would just be a fence with trees or something right in front of it all the way across it. The landscaping is not, in my opinion, dense. It would provide screen.
At this point, I do want to give you the floor. However, we do get comments from the planning board generally ahead of the meeting, and the planning board ended up meeting tonight, and I do see the chairman back with us, so I would like to get his comments first as to he's going to update the comments that he already sent to us based on the prior set of plans. And I think after that, then we're...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the power of planning board chairman, we did meet this evening to review supplemental submissions, and we're appreciative of the efforts to I can get through the
Get you on camera.
We did meet this evening drawings, submissions, reports from the engineering, and from a couple members of the design review committee, which did not have a chance to meet as a committee in the full. And after a lot of discussion review, we decided to let the prior comments stand with 3 supplements. The first is to support the comments of the DRC members who were able to make comments and those in engineering. And to let the DRC explain their own comments. I think a lot of those in the engineering comments you already were talking about. Second is a comment on what I'll call the side parking lot south elevation, which is of the 4 walls. It's the one dead wall. There was a desire, if there's a way to do this, to further articulate that wall. That is the wall that everyone will see coming north on Washington Street. And it's the one wall that is all brick right now, and it looks like a factory wall. There's a way that the petitioner could work with the design review committee to articulate that wall in some way would be greatly appreciated. The third comment is related to the traffic study. Just to reiterate the desire for a peer review of the traffic study. A couple comments made on that to do with whether the peak period is correct and the nearness to the transfer station. Already the comments were made that it's already difficult to get at certain peak periods in and out of the transfer station. And what is this going to do to that? Those are the comments and supplemental.
Thank you. So it's the Saturday morning drunk run.
Yeah, some question whether that was, so that was the question, also the question whether that was the true peak period. Anyway, there were other comments for the weekday peak period that may have been also worth exploring. And not doing a redoing the study itself, but just looking at the review. All right.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Dan Hill. I'm the land use and zoning attorney in Cambridge, and I represent a group of neighbors and butters to the site. We submitted a few letters to the planning board already, which I've copied the zoning board on, and I believe you have it in your file. The main substantive letter that was submitted was dated March 13th. And for the most part, those comments still stand. We reviewed the revised plans. I have not seen any comments from the design review committee on the revised plans. I don't know if any comments have been submitted. I'm not sure if I understood the planning board chair.
I'm hopeful that we'll hear tonight.
Okay. So we're looking forward to hearing their comments, because that was a major concern of ours, was the appearance and design of the building and its compatibility with the surrounding residential uses. As the board knows, this site is surrounded on three sides by residential zone. There's been a lot of discussion about the residential zone on this side, but it's important to remember there are several homes on Washington Street on the other side of the street, as well as Swanton in the residential zone. My clients are currently opposed to this project. They're opposed to it in its current form. But they're not opposed to any redevelopment on the site per se, because they're realistic. At the point, we know that commercial use is allowed as a right on this property. The board's authority to regulate or restrict uses is limited. A property owner still has to comply, however, with dimensional requirements and development requirements that are in the zoning bylaw, and it must submit itself to site plan review, as it is tonight, which must also consider design factors and other factors. We believe tonight that the project is still deficient in a number of areas, including non-compliance with the zoning bylaw, and it is still deficient in terms of its design, which I think the planning board reiterated tonight. We are interested in hearing the design review as well. Now, in the interest of time, an old judge told me once that I should really boil my arguments down to three main points, and so I'll try to do that tonight. The first point I want to talk about is title to the property. The applicant didn't raise this, surprisingly, but they did submit a title opinion to this board from Marsh Moriarty. This came about because one of the 5 parcels that comprise the site is not actually owned by the 2 co-applicants on the project. Now, we know that the main applicant is the developer Gershon Brown, but the owners are Fashion Realty Trust and Bossy Realty Trust. But there's this 5th parcel that's owned by YD Realty Trust, and YD Realty Trust has not signed the application. It's actually kind of concerning to us in that the application, you have it in your file, there were 2 forms. One form was signed by Fashion Realty Trust, the other form was signed by Bossy. The Fashion Realty Trust form was signed as of, for parcels 1, 2, and 3, and Bossy signed for parcels 4 and 5. Well, in fact, parcel 5 is not owned by Bossy. It's owned by YD Realty Trust. And in fact, the title opinion that was provided by the applicant tonight indicates that there may be an adverse possession claim, but that claim isn't even made by Bossy. It would be made by Fashion. So there appears to be a concerning misrepresentation that was made in the application, number 1. Number 2, the application is incomplete because you don't have signatures by all the owners of the property. Now, you may think that this is a trivial matter. Parcel 5 is a small parcel, admittedly, and the adverse possession claim may be viable. However, adverse possession claims are not the equivalent of title. And you have rules and regulations, and we would urge you to stick by it. This applicant should have, frankly, a year ago, addressed this issue when it knew. When it had its survey done in July of 2012, it knew that it didn't have control of the site. It had a problem with parcel 5, and yet it hasn't. To date, I checked the land court docket, there's still no complaint filed in the land court to clear title to that property. Now, they have an adverse possession claim, potentially, but in order to clear title, they have to go to land court and file an action. The title opinion, incidentally, is interesting in that Attorney Marsh suggests that what happened with parcel 5 is that the former owner, the current owner, YD Realty Trust, forgot to convey parcel 5 when it conveyed the rest of the site to Fashion Realty Trust, what they call Lot A. Now that's interesting because that's a whole other issue. You forget to convey something, that's a different claim. That's a claim of reformation of deed that you can bring to land court, not adverse possession, and that actually undercuts your adverse possession claim. So I don't want to dwell on that issue tonight. I wanted to raise it to the board because I think it's important. You do have an incomplete application, and there does seem to be a concern here, on my part at least, of misrepresentation that was made in the application itself, which is a serious matter. With respect to the claim, I hope there's actually another attorney in the audience who is a neighbor, and I'm hoping that he might also address that as well.
Is YD the entity that was disbanded in the 70s? Is that right?
My understanding from the opinion was that, yeah, YD was dissolved. But when a corporation is dissolved, the property interests basically flow to the old owners, to the officers, and you have to revive the corporation in order to make a transfer if they wanted to transfer the property. Dissolving a corporation does not dissolve your real estate interests. The real estate is still held, title is still held by YD Realty Trust.
For the owners of YD.
I'm sorry?
For the owners of YD.
Who are they? I have no idea.
No, for the owners of YD. If YD is dissolved.
Whoever they are.
Oh, right. With respect to the design and engineering issues, first I do want to thank Mr. Beals for his critical review. On behalf of the neighbors, we really appreciate that. I want to just briefly touch on the groundwater contamination issue. In our March letter, we raised this concern. We were concerned about, first of all, we were concerned about the hydrogeological report that indicated that the soil contamination was on the Bossy, the auto garage site, and the report stated that that site was not part of the project site, which of course it is. So that error seems to be corrected, but there's still a concern that this plume is only 10 feet away from the infiltration basin. And the Ransom report that was filed last week, it says that the plume is drawn on one of the schematics as the approximate location of the plume. It's not a scientific certainty of where that plume exists, and it's only 10 feet from the infiltration basin. Now, we have the same concerns as others do about whether or not this infiltration basin is actually going to work. There's concerns about where the seasonal high groundwater is compared to the bottom of the basin. And more importantly, the Ransom report states in its conclusion that its study is only a mathematical representation of the groundwater system and can only achieve a simplified representation of the actual system and should be considered as a generalized screening tool. Okay, clearly, the point of that mounding analysis is not to provide with any degree of certainty that infiltration system is not going to interfere with the plume. Of course, our concerns, as I believe is probably shared by others, is that once you start discharging a large amount of stormwater into the ground in that location, that water is going to move in some directions that we're not certain of and could interfere with the plume itself, intercept the plume, or the plume may intercept the infiltration recharge. This area, I think, really should be studied more thoroughly by peer review. I'm not sure it may be appropriate for the board to consult with somebody with some expertise on hydrology and with contamination of soils and groundwater. To date, that doesn't seem to have happened. I mean, at a minimum, the neighbors would ask that there be no activity in the site until after the remediation has taken place. It's not, of course, just the infiltration system, but general earth activities on this site could interfere with the plume. It doesn't seem to be a lot to ask that the remediation take place first, you get a clean bill of health from DEP, and then you can start building the project. By the way, when you're doing the remediation of the site, it's not unusual for DEP to say, this isn't completely clean, we're going to put an activity and use limitation on the property, AUL, and that could conflict with the developer's plans for the site. So yet another reason why the remediation should take place first, and then, if it's clean, proceed with the redevelopment. With respect to lighting, it seems that there's been a lot of discussion offline with the design review board about lighting of the property. We're happy that the lighting has been improved. However, I'm concerned that lighting of the building has not been fully addressed. The latest trend these days with these national chains is that their buildings are advertisements, and they light up the signs and they light up the interior. One of the frames that was put on the screen showed the entrance with a very large window, which the architect described as glazed. But that, to me, was an invitation for this CVS to provide some sort of signage inside the entrance that will be then lit at night. In my town of Wayland, unfortunately, the planning board approved a TD bank, and that's exactly how it's done. There's a TD bank, and then there's a big window in the front, and in the back of the window there's a big screen TV with TD bank that's lit up at night. I want to make sure that is not going to happen here. These new trends sometimes evade scrutiny and review because no one thinks to ask those questions, and I think perhaps that's not the intent, and if so, a condition will probably satisfy that concern. We concur with the recommendation for traffic peer review, and we also are concerned about the retaining wall as was raised over here. The town engineer said she was very concerned about the ability to actually construct the wall, number one, but also to maintain and clean it over time, given that it's so close to the existing wall. It seems like an easement would be necessary to actually construct it in the first place. And I also do want to reiterate the concern that was raised about the snow storage in this very small area. And I'll be more blunt, perhaps, than what Mr. Beal said. This is just impossible. This is not a viable snow storage area. This is where the landscaping is to protect the house. The house is not shown in this plan, but it's right here. Okay? And if you pile snow in this grass area, what's going to happen when that snow melts? It's going to flow right onto that property if the topography is correct. And that house being so close, who knows what kind of flooding may occur in the basement of that property. This is just not appropriate to pile snow that close to a house. It should go somewhere where it's away from the residential abutters. And I don't think trucking it off-site is a reasonable alternative either, although I know that's a trend these days. With respect to the zoning issues, we've outlined the zoning nonconformities in my letter of March 13th. There are a number of them which, I reviewed the rebuttal letter that was submitted by the applicant's attorney rebutting the town planner's review. In my mind, it hasn't really addressed most of the issues. Some of the issues I think are addressed, but just touching on a few important ones. There was a mention tonight about a 20-foot vegetated buffer between commercial districts and residential districts, and that's what's provided here, and that's appropriate. However, there is no buffer provided to the residential district on this side or on Swanton Street. Now, if Josh Alper were here, he'd probably argue with me and say, Dan, that's not what the bylaw is intended. That's intended for direct abutters. But these are direct abutters. Even though they're across the street, they're still abutters. And frankly, the provision requiring a 20-foot vegetated buffer is no less important to the home that's sitting right here, or here, or there. They still need a buffer. They're still facing commercial use. There is no 20-foot buffer. And I would argue that this project doesn't comply with that provision. With respect to parking, it's not clear to me why the developer thinks that 63 spaces is sufficient. I know why they're calculating 63. They're calculating it based on the 11,955 square feet of the retail space. It's not clear to me, however, why the mezzanine space is not included in the base calculation of the square feet. If you include the mezzanine, this project would require 69 parking spaces. Now, again, I don't understand why the mezzanine is not included. It's part of the store. In fact, I believe I heard the traffic engineer say that he updated his traffic report based on the increase in size of the mezzanine. So if the mezzanine counts for a trip generation analysis, why wouldn't it count for the parking analysis? So I have an outstanding question about that. The parking spaces themselves don't comply with the standards in the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw requires parking spaces to be 9 feet, a minimum of 9 feet width, a minimum of 19 feet long, and a minimum of 200 square feet. These spaces are 9 by 19, but they're not 200 square feet. Now, the developer has said, well, that's internally inconsistent. You can't have it both ways. The bylaw is inconsistent. We're going to give you 9 by 19. It's not internally inconsistent. The bylaw doesn't say you have to have a 9 by, that the minimum is 9 by 19. It's 9 feet, a minimum of 9 feet wide, a minimum of 19 feet long. A parking spot could be 10 by 20, and it will comply with the bylaw. So these parking spaces don't comply with that standard. With respect to headlight glare, and this where it raised that concern, still not addressed, and frankly I'm not sure how it can be, because when cars are pulling out of these driveways, their headlights will go directly into homes, and you can look, other plans show the location of the homes. They do face directly into the living rooms of those homes. We have an engineer in the neighborhood who looked at the internal landscaping. The zoning bylaw requires a 2% internal landscaping under section 5197. His analysis using the AutoCAD software was only 1.3% was provided. We'd like the board to take a look at that issue as well, perhaps the town engineer. The off-street loading, the loading area shown here, there's a requirement that the loading area be 50 feet from any residential abutter. This barely satisfies it, and I'm not clear myself, and perhaps someone could explain to me how a truck is going to actually use this area. If a tractor trailer comes in this way, pulls over here, and then backs in, how far is that trailer? How far is that truck going to be? How long is that truck? Where, does he move into these parking spaces? What if his car's parked here? If he's going into these parking spaces at all, you're within 50 feet of the residential abutter. We raised the issue of the fire lanes. I'll defer to the town planner on that. The bylaw is clear. It requires 15 feet fire lane around the perimeter of the building. This is not shown here. I think there's a dispute over the interpretation of the bylaw requirement. We don't think this project complies with 15-foot fire lane, and we would concur with the town planner on that. In closing, Mr. Chairman, we think it's evident that most of the concerns that we've raised and have been raised already are really driven by the intensity of the use of the site. It's obvious that the margin of error was discussed. There is very, very little margin of error here with respect to drainage, the concern with the impacts with the groundwater contamination. They're pushing the envelope on a lot of issues. They're pushing the envelope on the parking, about the number of spaces, the size of the spaces, the landscaping, the buffers. If this project was downsized and made more compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhood, smaller scale CVS that we've seen in other communities, a lot of these issues would be resolved. And like I said, the neighbors would be much happier. Because something can happen here. And I think the neighbors would like to see an improved site. The way it is today, it's not that pretty. We certainly want to see something there. We want to see it done right. We want to see the project comply with the zoning bylaw. We want to see it compatible with the surrounding residential uses. This is a very, very small business district, and it's surrounded by residential uses and residential zone. It should be, this project should reflect that dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to hear from Design Review Committee.
I'm David Anderson, representing the Design Review Committee. I just want to point out, you don't have this document because it's not fresh off the press today. We only received notification of the posting late last week. We've not had a chance to post a meeting to formally review and vote on comments. So these are provisional. I'll read you the letter and then we can discuss further if you'd like. So these are comments to the planning board. Dear Mr. Vitaro, the chair, the Design Review Committee has not formally reviewed the most recent set of drawings posted by the ZBA, as we are not able to schedule a public meeting since we were made, et cetera, et cetera. While comments below do not represent a comprehensive review of consensus, they are a good general look at our view of the design elements at this point. Regarding site plan, the solid 6-foot-high fence is still shown around the transformer at Washington Street, which is here. This blocks site distances, as discussed at the last meeting, which was on April 16th, I believe. With the design development team, bollards and plantings we feel are sufficient. The grading plan, the front door, we're calling the front door on Washington Street, is slightly lower than the current elevation. We suggest including an area drain to prevent ponding on the sidewalk near the entrance. Site details, site section CC, which is, I believe, more or less through here. The DRC requested that the concrete wall on the abutter's property be removed. This is the issue of the site retaining walls that have been discussed several times. And at our meeting on the 16th, we discussed that the design and development team would approach the abutter. And that the freestanding concrete wall on the abutter's property be removed. The site engineer stated at our meeting on October 16 that he would approach the neighbor to inquire whether the wall could be removed or if the gap between the walls could be infilled. It is unclear whether the wall on the abutter's property is actually freestanding near the road, but retains grade further away from the sidewalk. So it's a freestanding wall here, but then it's actually retaining soil because this elevation is higher as you go deeper into the site. This issue should be resolved as the compressed area of wall, two retaining walls, fence, and guardrail elements is visually chaotic. Our concern with that is the approach coming up the street, that you're seeing all of these layers of of barriers, as well as looking between them, that it's a series of elements that are stacked together, and also the safety issues that have been raised by others. There's no detail on the planters, which are listed here, and here. We're just looking for a dimensional detail. The Design Review Committee has concerns that the cavity holding soil may be too narrow for the health and vibrancy of plants intended to go there. Site lighting plan. The lighting plan is much improved. There is, however, no detail showing the fixture. Regarding architecture, the building has improved markedly. The signal achievement is making a doorway onto Washington Street that reads as a primary entrance into the store, while retaining a reasonable entry that opens onto the parking lot where the majority of customers will enter. The elements that need further refinement are related to details of materials and their arrangement. Items that still need attention include bricks, which have been shown to be Pine Hill Spectra chocolate face bricks, which are very uniform in color. While the design does have does provide some depth, so there is actually relief in the profile of the brick that it does step back. A less monolithic looking building could be achieved with bricks that have a more natural appearing variation. Some of the bricks detailing at the pilasters, which are sort of engaged columns that you see sort of bumping in here and here, and all along the Swanton Street elevation. Some of the brick detailing of the pilasters containing lights could use some refinement as well. Another concern is the PVC panels, which have reappeared in recent versions of the design despite our early and strong opposition. We also have concern about the color of the storefront framing, just the mullions on the windows. The arrangement of rooftop units, including visual screening and acoustical performance, should be provided. There are other small items, but these are the large issues left in discussion. We would welcome the opportunity to continue working with the applicant to continue the design improvements made thus far, making better serve the neighborhood and town. And regarding the question about white pine, there are elements in the planting design that we feel could use a little bit further refinement. We need a chance to look through the final submission before we can really finalize our comments.
Great, thank you. Are there any other town boards here? I don't see any hands. I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to what you've heard so far.
Certainly, my colleague will speak to the issue of parcel 5, but with respect to this request of a peer review of the traffic study, I would suggest to you that given the de minimis increase in the size of the building and the fact that a nationally recognized traffic expert has completed a traffic impact study, and the amount of traffic that would be generated in peak hours is de minimis, that it would not be feasible or necessary, particularly given that Winchester Hospital added tens of thousands of people, and there was no peer review of that. I think that in scope, this is far less. The next thing is, you do have my memo that I submitted with my letter of May 9th, which addresses what Ms. Ware raised as this project not being in compliance with the zoning bylaw. I will not reiterate that. I've submitted it all to you. But by way of example, Ms. Ware raises the issue by way of the fire lanes. We provided you with a letter from the captain in charge of reviewing the plans, and he has determined that there are sufficient fire lanes based on the code. With respect to the number of parking spaces, mezzanine space, that is storage space, is not included in the parking calculation pursuant to the terms of your bylaw. It may be included under the requirements of a traffic study, but there are two separate things, the zoning bylaw and the traffic study. So I will not reiterate what I put in the memorandum. I think it adequately addresses all of the issues. board meeting. We want to address the ownership. Thank you.
My name is Ken Ingber. With regard to the ownership issue, you do have a letter from Marsh Moriarty, Dylan Golder. Mike Marsh, I assume some of you are familiar with him. He is a top title attorney in the state. He gave a very substantial analysis of the situation. The thing I would want to emphasize about that letter and about the notion of adverse possession is that adverse possession results in ownership. Now, it is true that adverse possession does not automatically change what you find in the registry of deeds. But the law is quite clear that after 20 years of adverse possession, there is ownership. And that's what we have. We have a small orphaned area that adverse possession is specifically designed to fix. There is more than adequate evidence, as shown in the Marsh letter, that there has been all of the elements of adverse possession have been met. It has been open, it has been notorious. There are a number of elements of demonstrating how Fashion has asserted its dominion over the property, including, by the way, paying taxes, striping, putting up the fence, clearing snow, all of the things that an owner does. That has gone on not just 20 years, it's gone on 40 years.
If I can interrupt real quick, what about Mr. Hill's point that the wrong party signed off on behalf of Parcel 5?
Well, I guess what I was not entirely clear on that point. As to Parcel 5, it is what you have, and there may be a technical glitch in the original application, which is not unusual because the initial application is typically done not by a title search, but by the engineer going through that title. But what you have is the totality of that area being signed off by Fashion and by Bossing, and that orphaned area is right smack in the middle of it, so that there is no doubt that you have the owners of that entire property, including the orphaned parcel that was at one time owned by YD Realty, which has been dissolved for 40 years and has exercised no dominion, no control, no condition of ownership for all that time. This is owned by the signatories on that application.
Mr. Chairman?
No, please.
Massachusetts is a notice state, is that correct?
It's a race notice state, actually.
Right. So there is nothing in the registry of deeds, there's nothing in land court that has determined that adverse possession has created title in your client, is that correct?
There's nothing in the registry of deeds or in land court that is documented.
So it's just your assertion now. So if I was going to go to a title exam, there'd be nothing there that would show that your client owns this property, is that correct?
If you were to do a title search at the registry of deeds, you would not find it, that's correct.
So, and you have not filed a complaint in land court?
Not yet.
Not yet. So you don't have title?
No, I absolutely disagree with
No,
that.
you don't. You have a claim of adverse possession.
No, we have marketable title. No, Mike Marsh's letter is quite clear on the point, and there are citations in that letter. There is marketable title. One of the things, when you see a...
Can you get a title policy for that portion of it?
Yes.
For whom?
First American Title.
First American? I'd like to see the exceptions on that, if you have one.
I don't have it with me.
No, I know, but if you could submit that, because I do have a problem with that you're just making a claim of adverse possession, and you have no decree from land court or anything stating that you have ownership, so.
And as I say, that is, having a decree from land court would be one element of indicia of ownership. But what we have in that letter, what we have is 40 years of actual on-the-ground assertion, which ripens into ownership, and the case law is quite clear and cited in the letter.
It ripens if your assertions are proved, and there's nothing to say that they have. There's no decree of a court saying that, yes, your assertions for ownership by adverse possession have been proven.
That's correct. They have not been proven in the court.
Is it your intent to file a complaint?
I believe so eventually, yes. Bear in mind, we don't this is, we are the tenant of this property, let's recall that. But I believe, and certainly there's cooperation from the owners, and I think that there is a general consensus that we would like to fix the record title to reflect actual ownership.
So has the owner filed a complaint in Land Court?
Not to my knowledge yet.
You know, it takes a while.
Shannon Sampson, I just want to say one other thing. We would like to thank the design review committee for the amount of time that they've been devoted and their collaboration. Everything was done.
Absolutely. Like I said earlier, you've obviously spent a lot of time, both sides, and it's markedly improved from what we've seen, what we saw back in June.
Could you, Mr. Chairman, one thing, just I would like your opinion on the zoning, our zoning that has one place that the parking space has to be 9 by 19, and another has to be 200 feet.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. There has been a discrepancy in the zoning bylaw of the town of Winchester for many years about this. And to my knowledge, after investigation, 9 by 19 has been used consistently by this town. 9 by 19 is what you find around town. You do not find 200 square feet. It has been approved over and over again. That has been the interpretation of the zoning bylaw. There is case law which we have submitted, case law that the building commissioner is aware of independently. He's known about this and has been guided by this through his own legal direction, that where there is an inconsistency, and it's quite clear that there is an inconsistency, they are not used in the same way. The way zoning bylaws are written, they are clearly, one has taken precedence over the other, and the correct interpretation has been 9 by 19.
And your bylaw also provides in paragraph 10 with the specific provision controls of the dimension.
I've read those sections, and you talk about inconsistency. And I'm not really debating the issue, and I understand what the practice is. And I think part of the confusion comes from one definition, one criterion comes out of the definition, the other criteria come out of the parking lot dimensions. So I think when anybody looks at what are the parking lot dimensions, parking space dimensions, you go to the parking table, it says 9 by 19. And then later on in the zoning, if you read all the way through to the end of the definitions are given, it says a minimum of 200 square feet. So what I have a hard time understanding is the inconsistency of saying you have to have at least 9, at least 19, at least 200. Is the way it's written.
It is, and theoretically they are not inconsistent, but in fact they are inconsistent. In fact, because when you look at the section that talks about the zoning, that talks about the dimensions of the parking spaces, it's quite clear from any ordinary meaning of this that this is what the zoning bylaw is calling for. The 200 feet comes separately. It's in a general area. It doesn't apply, and in fact the town has consistently applied 9 by 19. This is not something new that has just been discovered. It's been like this for many years in this town. Always consistently 9 by 19. There's nothing new here.
Well, in the old definition was 9 by 22, right? It was 22.2, which gave us the 200 square feet. And then this 5.1.6 maintains the 22-foot for the 22-foot length for parallel spaces, but then it adds this 19-foot for angle parking. So I think we can look at it as really what 5.1.6 is an upgrade to the existing to account for a reduced size for angle parking, which we did. 5.1.6.
You don't have a site plan.
No, we do have angle parking.
Parallel is like on the street, on the side of the street. You have 90 degree. Any other questions?
I see your hand. At this point, we will open it up for comments from the can I see a show of hands for folks who would like to be heard? I see 3, 4. All right, I'll start over here and we'll move across the room this way. We have people there. Okay. And what I would suggest is that if you agree with what's been said, you can say that. That works just as well as a long repeat of what we've heard. So we'll start with you. Can you just stand up and then state your name for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Peter Cura. I reside at 247 Washington Street, Apartment 18. Mr. Chairman, I'm also an attorney who's maintained an active real estate practice in my state for the past 20 years. And I'll be brief. I largely agree, well, in fact, I almost totally agree with Mr. Hill's position here. And I just wanted to make it clear, I just got a copy of Mr. Marsh's letter today, and I read it, and I will submit written formal comments to the board. But in partial response
on his title issue.
On the title issue, yeah. And in his opinion, I did not see anywhere in his opinion when Mr. Marsh stated that either party owned the property. He said they had a claim for adverse possession, and it's very different. Nowhere in this letter did I see that Mr. Marsh said that either of these parties had marketable title. What he says, and I'm quoting, adverse possession is also a means by which an owner can acquire a good marketable title. Third, I'm a title insurance agent myself, and I'll elaborate on my own qualifications in my letter, Mr. Chairman. Even if you acquire a title insurance policy, what you're getting is insurable title, not necessarily good, clear record in marketable title. There is not clear record in marketable title at this point, in my opinion. And fourthly, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, this board is not authorized to decide those issues. To my knowledge, the only people who have jurisdiction are the land court and the superior court in the Commonwealth. And I think it would be inappropriate to have a decision made before this board. That's really, those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Regina Sabatino. I live at 13 Oak Street. My father's owned the house for about 40 years plus. I'd like to talk about the drainage system. It's my understanding that the infiltration system is designed for a 100-year storm. What about the drainage swale behind my father's house? What type of storm is that designed for, and what is the peak elevation for the swale? How many gallons of water can the container hold? Worried about the flooding, contamination seeping into neighbors' land. In reference to the fence, we're requesting, I know that this might not be possible, but a 10-foot cedar wood fence, along with numerous mature shrubs, that will abut my father's property line, which would provide us with privacy and block out noise. In reference to the dumpster, it was brought up by the lawyer about a new plan because of, I believe he said, a 50-foot distance. I really don't want to see the dumpster up against his property if a decision needs to be made to change it. Delivery schedules. I would like to know how CVS will handle suppliers that do not follow their delivery schedules. I'm worried about truck parking on Washington Street, which would block street views, cause diesel fumes. These are all safety issues and increasing noise. Also, I don't want idle trucks in the parking lot. An acceptable delivery schedule needs to be worked out. The hours, store hours need to be provided. There needs to be a gap on the hours. CVS cannot increase the hours, no 24/7 and no and/or drive-through will not be put in place now or in the future? And what will be the holiday hours? Signs. It is designed so that there will be a spotlights on the signage at the front of the store, and I would like this to be done to the signage for the back of the building and or wherever CVS decides to place the signage on their building. I do not want glare. Speed bumps need to be put in place for safety reasons. The alarm system, what is the response time for shutting off the alarm system? CVS was supposed to get back to the board with an answer. I prefer not to have a mega CVS store, but mom and pop stores. I know that CVS might have the bylaws behind them, but we need to remember that residents put their sweat and blood, heart and soul to own property in this beautiful, quaint town of Winchester. Winchester needs to change the bylaws. We need to put an end to future requests like this to save the integrity, charm of our town. I don't understand why the town can't step in and veto CVS request to build in a heavy residential area. Please stop CVS from building and change the bylaws so no other requests can be brought up to the town again. If the town cannot stop CVS, please hear the cries of our residents, please, and make sure that CVS honors, upholds the town's and residents' requests. Thank you.
What is your comment about the sign? About the sign in the back? The front was okay?
I don't live in the front, so I know it's designed so there will be a spotlight, which you call it,
Exterior lighting.
on the signage at the front of the store. And I would like this to be done to the signage for the back of the building or wherever CVS decides to place the signage on the building. No glare for all around the building.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Yeah, in the back.
Yes, my name is Brian Bell. I own the property on 423 Washington Street in Englewood. And my concern is with the snow removal. 2 years ago, the city literally boxed our house in with a 13-foot high wall of snow that stretched all the way up Englewood. And I've already called up the town a couple times regarding these plans with the trees there. And you have Swanton Street and Washington Street, and you have the town removing snow. It's not going to go on the neighbor's side where all the residential people are. How are the children going to walk to school when you have that big wall? And additionally, what are you going to do about the trees? The snow has to go somewhere. So I think the town really hasn't considered that. And I would also like to ask the town to look at an alternative site. I don't understand why across Stop and Shop, there's all this abandoned land there. It's commercial space. Main Street is more commercially zoned in more of the feel of the town. And then the place behind Stop and Shop, where the Mercedes place is, he's leaving that spot, so that's also going to be abandoned. So now you have all these spots around there that are openly, available in town. So I don't know why it's not, at least from looking at it from Winchester, from mine as a resident, I'm just concerned about the town's fabric going in the wrong direction here. That's it.
Thank you. Looks like you're the last one.
And Sarah, the parking stalls are not 19 feet wide. There's an inconsistency in the plans that I want to point out. If you look at the plan called the traffic plan, which tries to talk about the length of the stalls, and you look at the AA cutout of the parking stall, that's down in the right-hand corner, the lower right-hand corner, there they show the guardrail stuffed up against the fence, the privacy fence, and very little landscaping. Compare that to the landscaping plan, which shows the guardrail necessarily in front of their landscaping because a bumper would kill their landscaping. And it also shows the type of plant that they're planting is 24 inches high and 5 to 9 feet wide. It might even encroach on the 17 feet. So their plans are inconsistent. One shows the guardrail immediately bumped up next to the fence. The other shows the guardrail at a different position next to the curb, so that there is no overhang.
And you're talking about where?
The west side of the property.
The west side of the property.
So there is no overhang, there's no 2 feet of overhang if the landscape plan is going to be implemented as designed. I don't see there's any way of getting a 2-foot overhang if you're going to have any guardrail or any landscaping. So there's no real room for a 19-foot long stall in that area. The second thing that I'm concerned about, I'm really concerned why Attorney Marsh, who presented the opinion about the title, who is a self-professed expert in title matters, did not disclose the circumstances surrounding the dissolution of YD Realty and did not disclose the legal fiduciary person who has the responsibility for that land. I have spoken to this person, and he's worried about his legal responsibilities, and I have to be very careful about what I say in these proceedings because of that. But I will say that I believe that if the board continues these proceedings, there is a possibility not only of that person's interaction, but a different courts stepping into these, taking this board, presenting a lawsuit to this board. So that would be above and beyond any appeal to a decision that this board would be made on this matter. That would simply be because this board would be a party to taking action that was against the ownership of their land and the dissolution, the dispersion of those assets. So this matter of adverse possession is not as straightforward as has been presented to you, not in the least. And I believe that there is sort of a omission, very considerable omission of easily found facts that I found in 4 hours and was talking to the man within 4 hours. So, all from information in the registry. So,
would you care to enlighten us?
Well, I did. I already gave you a long letter that talked about that.
You've spoken with the
I've spoken with
of YD?
I've spoken with the man who currently has fiduciary responsibility for YD.
For YD.
Yeah. And he's easily, again, he's...
Do you want to let the petitioner know who that?
I'll have to speak with him in order to get that. He, as I said in the last meeting, YD is evaluating their options at this time.
Well, you might want to put them in touch with one.
Yes, but I'm surprised, again, that Mr. Marsh did not disclose that. Here is a man who's supposedly a title expert. If I'm able to find this information within 4 hours, why isn't he? Perhaps he did find it and didn't disclose it, and that's disconcerting.
As to the mystery person, we are aware of who Ms. Sarah is talking about. I don't know that it's appropriate to get into this because it's not necessary. We're happy to get into it if need be. But the point is, adverse possession is based on objective fact. The point of adverse possession is that somebody exercises open, notorious, adverse use of property for a sufficient period of time so that the true owner, if the true record owner wants to say something, there is opportunity to do so. YD Realty dissolved 40 years ago. The person who Ms. Sarah is talking about is not YD, not YD's stockholders, none of those.
Well, and if there's been a dispute that's been festering for 4 years, then certainly that seems to support your adverse possession claim. But the concern for us is what authority do we have to move forward based on the fact that you have this claim of title, but it doesn't appear that you have actual.
Isn't it also, we have petitions where it's a condominium, and let's say it's a condominium out of a 2-family or 3-family home, and if the Board of Trustees hasn't signed off on it, right, would you call that kind of petition? We're not even able to hear the petition. And how is this
I mean,
different from that?
if it's a procedural problem, the application really isn't being, filed and complete. If it's not filed and complete, you should really proceed.
If I can address that, I think there are two things that are going on when a zoning board is concerned about ownership. The first is you don't want to waste your time with somebody who really doesn't have control of the property. That's just a waste of everybody's time, and you get burned a couple of times and you stop that. That's simply a practical issue. But the issue that we've been talking about is actual ownership, and I don't want to repeat the whole argument, but I'm suggesting that open, notorious ownership, exercising dominion of the sort that we've talked about, not just for 20 years, but for 40 years, establishes ownership. You do not require for petitions, you do not require title certification. You typically accept the representation of the people who are before you. You have that indicia before you. There has been a question about this YD. I have presented to you, I think, sufficient evidence to proceed. What you have here are a number of people who are very concerned about ownership, who aren't YDs, and who aren't YD's stockholders.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure, go ahead.
I'd just like to pick up on that, just a couple of things. One, objective facts, as I understand them, are those that are decided by either a superior court judge or a land court judge. And I still don't understand how this board is the arbiter of those facts. And I don't understand how somebody's property rights are a possible waste of time. I don't think the legislature or the courts in the Commonwealth have ever looked at it that way.
Thank you. Joan?
I mean, I don't think it's this board's place to decide ownership. I mean, our issue is whether or not the application has been filed correctly and filled incorrectly. And I think that's what we have to look at, not, kind of the problem here is that someone has brought to our attention that there's a problem. And now we have to determine, if the application is complete according to our bylaw and our rules and regulations. And we require the owners to sign it.
I think if you were to refer to the town's own records of who owns it, I think that is as far as you ought to be going, and that's as far as you, I think, would typically ever go. And the fact is, fashion has been paying real estate taxes for 40 years.
40 years. I see both points, and I see how this is different from the position with the condo association, where it's we clearly have the wrong person signing the petition. So what's the remedy in this case? I mean, do we send it back to petitioner to file a case in land court and let this fester further?
I mean, that takes a long time. I mean, you have a petition, and then the land court examiner is appointed, and then the land court examiner is going to give you title, and then, I don't think the board wants to start this whole thing over again, so.
No, you're right.
Just a suggestion. It doesn't have to be long. I've seen cases go to the land court. If the applicant's prepared, it can be done in 6 to 8 months. Frankly, they knew about this a year ago. I don't think the board has too much sympathy. They chose not to deal with it. They didn't represent it correctly in the application, and that's the cost of doing business. If this board continues the hearing for 6 or 8 months, no big deal. They should have done this before. I think it's entirely appropriate for the board to continue the hearing tonight and let them resolve this issue. And then when it's resolved, they can come back, and you don't have to start over. Start where you left off.
I think at the very least we should get town council to weigh in on it.
Well, I agree.
Before we go any further. Because I share John's opinion. I mean, Massachusetts is a notice state. That's one of the first things you learn in law school.
And I would do title certain nothing's gonna hold. And I understand, but, and we don't usually require a deed or any kind of proof of ownership. But this has been brought up as an issue, and now it's before us. So the issue is, what do we do with it now that it's before us? And Mr. Marsh has agreed that there is no, I don't want to say clear marketable title, because that's really not what we care about. We care about, ownership. But there is an issue.
If I can quote from Mike Marsh's letter, he says, "Fashion accordingly has good marketable title to the narrow strip, as there is an abundance of evidence detailed below that they have a claim of ownership of the narrow strip by virtue of adverse possession. A title is not good on the record. A title not good on the record thus may be shown by all or other evidence outside the record to be marketable beyond any reasonable doubt, citing a Massachusetts case."
It shows the land order of this period, who makes a determination.
Actually, it's before you. I'm afraid that you're in a situation, you do need to make a determination of whether we have...
Well, our determination,
I think that's a question for...
I think our determination is whether the application has been filed in accordance with our bylaw and our rules of regulation.
Fair enough.
I think that's what we're not here to sit and make, decisions about title issues. I don't think we can.
No, I think that's
I don't think that's
a
appropriate.
special town council question at the minimum.
I mean, I think, my concern would be, champery is someone goes out and finds, little pieces of land or, 1/240th of an interest and someone else buys it, messes up everything. I don't want to get into that with this. I don't think it's always purview to get into this. But again, if there's a procedural problem, I don't want, and I'm not voting on this because I've missed a hearing or two. I don't want the board and everybody else to go through this whole thing and then have the court remanded back to rehear it because of the title issue. And we haven't followed our procedures, so I think we need some guidance.
With that, it's...
Excuse me, I'm not on the end of earlier, I was up in the balcony, I think you told me that there was a standing ovation, and you didn't acknowledge me when you were saying for people who wanted questions, so I didn't get this, or...
I didn't see it.
Sorry. Okay. I want to
State your name, please.
I'm sorry, I'm Andrea Corey, and I live about a block away on Harvard Street, 2800 Street. When they were referring to the water table and the voice land and stuff like that, I saw when they were doing those soil samples, and it wasn't like when there was snow on the ground, so I think, did you say it was November when they did it? Because I think that's actually technically fall, it's not really winter, and, if you remember, most of our snow this winter unfortunately came, into the new year. So that may have accounted for some discrepancy with, soybean voice, because we didn't have an actual, 100% wasn't really, I don't believe actually winter, there wasn't snow on the ground. And also taking into consideration that the forecasters, the weather experts, continually saying that we haven't had, we're still kind of in a deficit of rain, we haven't had a full amount. And I also wonder what bearings, have been continually working on the average owner and lowering water tables and stuff, and if that also could have played in there. And it may not have been, because I don't, that's not my expertise. But I do recall that there wasn't snow when they were doing those soil testing and stuff. The only thing I wanted to raise regarding traffic is, are they still planning on doing that loading thing? Because they don't have a loading zone, they're going to bring the truck in and the employee's going to go out there and walk off? Is that's going to be? Okay, yeah, I missed one meeting, so I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that you did. And on that same vein, did they ever, has anyone ever decided what contaminants are not only in the soil, but within the building materials that are being demolished? Is that ever come up like this? Has anybody done any sampling of that to determine what, when demolition is taking place, what we're actually dealing with?
That's a good question. No, I don't know. Yes, I do. Now, we can ask petition for that.
Well, yeah, just because, we're in all of the regular process, we
considering that there was a use of the properties there, one was dry cleaning, one was service station, and then auto repair, and just thought it would be a really good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to the condition of the buildings there?
There is an LSP that is involved in the remediation, and I'm sure that Brian can address, have they looked at the building composition of materials?
I could answer that with going back to Dr. Yes, there's some HMI, hazardous material in the building. It's not significant. And as part of the remediation plan, before we do the demolition, that will all be taken care of. A lot of it is the roof.
With that, it's almost 10:15. I think we should stop the public comments at this point and decide what the next steps need to be. We have a couple of things to talk about. There was proposals for revised drainage plans, if I understand it, are being worked on. And there was an initial proposal for a peer review of both the drainage and the traffic. Are we, how do we feel, Larry, about the big drainage and the need for peer review at this point?
Well, if what we have in front of us right now is the final set of plans we have to make a decision on, I think it would warrant a peer review, but I think what the applicant's saying is that it's still a work in progress. They're changing the design of the detention basin, or at least looking at it. So I don't think it would make sense to give this set of plans to a peer review, because then it would be a complete review. Perhaps we'll wait to see what the applicant comes back and concluded is, if they reconcile all the differences in the data presented, and then decide.
And address all the town engineers' concerns properly to their satisfaction. Okay. Now, what about traffic? What do folks feel about that? I'll just start off. We have been very conservative. We've been loath to require that in the past, where we've had sufficient expertise on the board to review the proposal and give it a sanity check at our board level. I recognize that there's a lot of extra attention on this, but I do also note that there was, under their most conservative approach, there was at most a 2% increase in impact according to the expert. So,
and as I understand it, the peer review would just look at the figures that they have now. It wouldn't expand the area at all, or look at different towns, different data sets. It just reviews the data set that we have right now.
And the latest traffic study does add in some trips for the hospital that were not there for the proposed expansion of the hospital beyond what they're currently planning for. So it just seems pretty conservative to me.
In my view, I think it's an adequate traffic study. I think the conflict I have is the town engineers on record saying she recommends a peer review of traffic impact and access study. I think we have to at least give that some consideration.
And what is that?
If we did have a peer review look at things, I agree with knowledge is very limited to read this report and if there is to enact it.
Well, if we're going to do that, then we should vote on it tonight and get that started.
Yeah, I do. I think just out of an abundance of caution, I don't, I'm not an expert on traffic. And so I really appreciate the input. And it especially gives me a little hesitation when we do have an expert who's going to look at one plan, at the set of plans, and to see some discrepancies. I don't think an election is something. So I make a motion that we require a petitioner to provide a peer review traffic study. To fund the peer review traffic study, and the peer review would be chosen by town engineer.
I believe there's a process for that. You have to go out for bid, is that right, Janine?
So now I simplify my motion. I make a motion that the petitioner provide the funding for a peer review study of the traffic.
You may want to just modify it, saying a limited peer. In my comments were mostly on the site plan,
Yes,
not on the traffic facility.
No, I understand that. Just the fact that one in-depth study, one type of plan shows some discrepancies. And we haven't had that same kind of in-depth study on traffic. So I'd like to have somebody who brings the same type of expertise that you bring to that, to the traffic.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. We will request the limited peer review of the traffic. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do we need to,
Let's just finish this first.
do we need to make a motion to get an opinion from town council as to the title issues, to the ownership issues?
To the application, where the application has been sufficiently completed and filled in.
My plan was to give him a call and ask, but if we need a motion, then that's, then I so move.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. The other question that I have for petitioner and Mr. Anderson, if he's still here, is will you have an opportunity to meet with the DRC to address some of the issues that you're facing?
I would
We actually have a meeting already posted for this Thursday, but that's the agenda item on that is Winchester High School. So we could indeed have a meeting, post a meeting for the next coming weeks. So yeah, we certainly could do that.
All right.
But it won't be this week.
No, understood. You need time to have a notice. Is that enough for the next meeting? Yes.
Paul Beck, the First Member on Crowley. We've been before the board for months now. My concern, one of our concerns is
multiple boards.
The peer review, how long is this going to take? I mean, we've been through this. My impression earlier was you did require peer reviews, and this was not something that's going to happen. And now, tonight, you want a peer review for the traffic. What can we do to expedite this? What can we do to put a cap on what the cost is going to be and to limit the scope? I mean, I don't think anybody here wants to be dragging this on through July, August, and September. Is there anything we can do to know who the peer reviewer is going to be, how quickly it's going to take, and specifically give them the scope so we can hopefully bring this to a conclusion one way or another?
You can keep it under $5,000 and keep it just at 3 quotes. That would be.
Say that again?
If we kept the price to under $5,000, we could do it with town engineer, just take some of the just 3 quotes, they don't have to put it out.
But how long is the bidding process going to take, and then how long is
That's what
it?
I'm saying, she just has to get 3 quotes.
So it could happen in
Who would do this, the planner? Or
Town engineer.
town engineer?
I would assume. I don't know who does it now. Does the planner do it, or does you do it? Who does it?
What's the rush?
Exactly. Yeah, I think the engineering department will help them do it. So if you get the scope limited, you have to 95,000.
But I think you're asking questions about the schedule, so if we have a limited scope, we should limit the scope to the Thursday to get it done by the next meeting. I mean, we're really asking somebody to read it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a letter, it's not going to be a few things, a letter to comment, looking at the assumptions.
And our traffic engineer will provide the,
Right.
or you'll provide the report.
And it should be, like they said, we need to continue for your revised drainage plan anyway, so there's every reason to expect that we'll have the results for the next meeting. If you work quickly with your town engineer.
Yeah, I think also just to make sure there's clear communication, I would consider allowing the peer reviewer to talk directly to your consultant, in case he has a question.
Well, our traffic engineer will be ready to talk to whoever tomorrow morning.
Because it would be a waste of time to come back here only to have peer review articulate a misunderstanding.
Exactly. So what is the process? Do we contact the town engineer tomorrow morning?
I would do that tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question about the traffic. Did anyone study the side street traffic apart from like Washington and Swanton and the previous study was eliminate the main street of Washington and Swanton Street? Because I feel like I live on the corner of Winchester, and that because that's cut off from the Washington line anyway, it's kind of have a lot of traffic coming onto the side street there. I think it's probably for residential as well, that kind of thing, but we sell these for a limited period of time. The way about to do that?
That's what the peer reviewer will look at.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was going to be the main star or Washington.
They're not going to expand the scope of what's already been studied.
That's what I was asking.
We're going to look at the adequacy of it.
So it previously was not studied inside the street. We have a direction across where the entrance is, I believe, to trying to get, everybody looking at that. I can't see it on the wrong side, but I believe Chester Street, some people right out into where people will be coming and going out of it. And I think that the people in that street, there's a lot of small children looking there and do passing by traffic and stuff. At least revisit that or look at it if it hasn't been looked at. And maybe try to come up with some accommodation when we make a street in a way that that's to be decided by this study.
Yes, John Natale, also Winchester Street. I wanted to say something like what the lady just said. The existing traffic study, I'm quite sure, ignored feeder streets like Chester Street, which is on the flight path from the egress to the Lawrence Street and back to the parking lot. So I hope that feeder streets like Chester Street are included in the study, and this is just the main arteries like Washington and Swanton Street, which would be the grocery sector. Chester Street, Florence Street, Irving Street, Hyde Street are going to be majorly impacted, and I hope they're part of the study.
Absolutely. In fact, when they had some road work or some kind of work done about, I don't know, it was in the past year, I believe. I mean, I could not literally get out of my driveway. It's like parking lot.
Thank you. All right, I think we need to pick a date.
Mr. Chairman, you might want to amend the motion on peer review to keep it at a certain dollar level if you want.
With the $5,000 do it.
Whatever you have to do.
Okay, I'll restate my motion that we ask petitioner to fund a peer review of the traffic, peer review study of the traffic data that's been provided in their submission to be capped at an amount of $5,000. So as to provide town engineer to bid it out to three people, three contractors. Three traffic engineers.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. What works for folks for the next meeting? What's the time frame for getting the revised drainage plans completed?
Address the town engineer's comments in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. So, a month or so from now should be sufficient then. Sometime in mid-June. And then will that, well, we need time to talk with we'll sit down with the DRC as well. But early June is what you're,
Yes.
and don't forget, we need 5 days, 5 working days in advance to get the plan.
Or more.
Would they also be discussing residential issues? The neighbors brought up some issues, would they be also trying to solve those issues also? For the drainage, like I got some things out.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can do that. Just June 11th, sort of, you're on. Good there? Yeah, all right. All right, we need a motion. I move that we continue the hearing until June 11th, and can I get a writing from you?
What time?
7:45 here, June 11th.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so we're all set. 5. We need a motion?